This is the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast, your home for all things Saskatchewan, all things real estate. If you're a first-time home buyer and you're wondering, what are the things that I am supposed to be focusing on when I'm looking at a brand new home? Today we have realtor from Saskatoon, Conor Palendat, who's going to show us the 5 areas that you should focus on when buying your first home. All right, before we get totally into the 5 things, Conor, just introduce yourself a little bit in real estate. How long have you been a realtor and what areas do you serve?
So grew up, born and raised in Saskatoon. I've been in real estate now for, I think, going on into the 5th year. Mostly residential, but our team also does commercial, a little bit of farm. So mostly Saskatoon and area, but we also do service PA, kind of that lake region. That's mostly our focus right now.
Number 1 of 5 on our list is structural integrity. So start us off, Conor. What would we look at if we were a first-time home buyer taking a peek at a home?
So I always like to start outside anytime we're viewing a house. I know lots of people just want to run in quick right away, kind of look at things. Problem is, if you start, getting into a time crunch with other showings, maybe you just gloss over the whole exterior. You get in, you get busy inside, you forget things. So first thing I kind of like to look for, shingles are a big one. Obviously, you want your roof to be in really good shape. So sometimes, depending, where the house is on the street, you might have to go across the street to get a better view, or the backyard. Another one with houses is anywhere where there's corners. So
let's take a look at it, Conor.
Where something meets is usually a good indication. Your guys' house is in pretty good shape, so it's got all the parging for the most part. But a lot of homes, if it's a home in the 80s or 90s, a lot of that parging's starting to crumble, come off, and it can expose cracks that are on the actual foundation itself. Another good area, always this driveway area. You get your concrete pad. Now, if you have a driveway like this where it's brick, it will be very common for it to shift over time, so you will kind of get those undulations and things like that. But if you've got a solid concrete drive and it's heaving or it's cracking, or if there is a bunch of separation kind of from where your garage and the driveway butt up, that's generally an indication that there's been quite a bit of shifting. If you're getting any cracking kind of at the base, the corners, things like that. Stucco is another good one, because if you have had a ton of shifting, you will get cracking in the stucco. So that's something you can really easily kind of look for. And then just some minor things on the outdoors too, your soffit, your fascia, just kind of making sure everything's in good shape there. Obviously indicates that it's been well kept and that there's nothing that you really have to worry about too much there. Obviously, always get a home inspection. That's a big one. Anything you can just see visually kind of on the outside might not tell the whole story. So definitely don't just, kind of give it a quick glance over and think, hey, it looks good to go, because sometimes looks can be deceiving. But it definitely, doing a walkthrough like this gives you a list of things. So when it does come time to inspection, you can ask your inspector, hey, we noticed these few things. Can you tell us about that? Things like that. So it really kind of gives you an idea going into inspection, what to expect. You never want to be surprised, but it also gives you, some questions and things, so you can make sure you've got as much information as possible.
Awesome.
Another important part of exterior is obviously not just structural integrity, but obviously energy efficiency, everything like that. Windows. So another thing you can check on, make sure kind of everything around the sides of the window, whether it's the frame, the molding, everything's in good shape. What you don't want is water getting in behind, in between, causing any rot, because obviously, if it drains down in behind, your siding, your framing, everything, it could be rotting out. So you really want to make sure that everything's good there and there is no signs of already moisture damage or rotting taking place. Another area, basement windows. Prone to cracking at the corners especially. You'll actually see in new builds now, they actually will cut with a concrete saw, corners. They'll slash at each corner, because they know that when it shifts, it's going to crack. And so basically it's a way to prevent it and prevent, big cracks down the line.
So number 2 on our list, Connor, is we're taking a look through a property. We're trying to determine if it's the right home to buy. Talk about needed improvements of the property and what are some things that we're specifically looking for as the home buyer and realtor.
For sure. So needed improvements, I would classify something that has to be done pretty close to after purchasing the property. This is something you don't want to leave necessarily 2 seasons, something like that. So big one are shingles. Obviously you don't want rain, snow, animals getting in, so making sure that those are in really good shape is going to be important. Now obviously shingles are going to wear slightly different rates. If we're on the back side of a house like this that gets most of the sun during the day, those shingles are going to wear out quicker than the front. So depending, if you still have shingles of the same kind maybe laying around or something, you could do 1/2 or whatever, things like that. But shingles are a big one. Things that are safety wise, so if you do have a back deck like this, obviously when you're looking at the house for the first time, you are going to want to take a look underneath if you can. If it's not sealed up, make sure nothing's rotting. Looks like it's well built. Obviously it's a safety concern. You got, say, your buddies over, you got 12 people on the deck and all of a sudden it collapses because it's in bad shape. That's always bad. Another big one I would say that often gets overlooked is grading. So you really want to make sure your yard, the land around the house is not sloping towards the house. Obviously in Saskatchewan,
get a big rain. Yep.
Big rain. Snow is a big one. Lots of people think rain, but really that snow melt's a big one. And so you get all that piled up. If it's all draining towards your house, if it's an older home that maybe doesn't have a sump pump, something like that, obviously all that water is getting in around your foundation. Concrete over time obviously does not do well with being soaked in water. So be super important to look at any evidence that water's been running towards foundation. Is the grading really bad? Chances are, if it is, water has been running there. And so that's something you'll want to update, within reason. You don't have to slope the whole yard away, but definitely around the house, you want to make sure everything's kind of moving away that way.
And that's one of those things when you're buying the house, you're focused on the bedrooms and the kitchens and how nice it looks. No one ever thinks about the grading of the property. Am I going to deal with some issues in the future? So I think that's a really great one.
Yeah, and I always tell clients too, everyone's excited. They want to go see the houses. They're worried about paint colors and they're worried about this and that. And it's more my job to point some of those things out and just make them aware, right? It's a reminder. I don't want to kill the party. I know people are excited to see things, but at the same time, no one wants to buy a dud, spend a ton of money, have a mortgage on a place that's going to have a ton of issues. So that's something I always focus on more. I let whoever, worry about paint color, countertops, things like that, to their preference. But yeah, I'm usually picking the place apart as much as I can. So a bit of a buzzkill, I know, but I think it's better in the long run to kind of have that perspective.
Number 3 on our list, quality of life improvements. What do we mean by that?
So quality of life is going to differ from the necessary improvements. So quality of life is just anything that's going to make your experience living in the property better. So, if it's a nice fire pit area like this, maybe it's already got one, but it's in, disrepair, something that you want to fix up, whether it's a deck like we talked about, obviously structurally is important, but, if it needs to be refinished, resanded, things like that. Maybe the railing around it is not in the best of shape, or don't like it, things like that. So same thing in the interior, right? That would be like countertops. It's not necessary that you change out the countertops, but if you're going to enjoy it more, get more satisfaction out of living there, and it fits more kind of with your lifestyle, your aesthetic, then those are quality of life things. So, another one's air conditioning. Depending where you come from, air conditioning might not be the norm. Obviously, Saskatchewan, a lot of people grow up with air conditioning, just the extreme temperatures here in the summer. So things like that. If he doesn't already have an air conditioner, lots of people, I would say that's number one on their list is if there's no AC, okay, we got to get an AC. So things like that is where we would call that quality of life.
Walk me through kind of the bargaining side of that. So when we're talking about things like air conditioning and countertops, does it depend on the market that you're in on when you can kind of say, home doesn't have this, it should have this, I now want to bargain for that? If we're in a tight market, can you kind of push for those things? Give me your opinion on that.
Yeah, so it's tough to negotiate something that, you know, the property doesn't have. Now, the caveat on that is how is the property priced? And where are the comparables priced? So if comparable properties have all of those things already,
like an air conditioning
and you know the property you're looking at is about the same price it's listed at, and it doesn't have that stuff, that's kind of where that negotiation comes in. Because like, okay, how did you come to this list price? Like, what were you factoring in, right? Every agent usually will do a market analysis on the property. They'll find all the comparables in the area that are on the market, have recently sold, things like that. And so that's how we usually gauge kind of our list price. So if you do get into a situation where, you know, maybe some of those features are lacking, countertops haven't been updated, there's no AC, things like that, and comparable properties that are priced the same have all of that, that's kind of the angle you would take in negotiating. Is like, hey, look, like all these other properties have it, you know, where did you come to your number from, things like that. And that's the angle you go, because, you know, if there's two properties, they don't have, both of them don't have air conditioning, you can't really be like, oh, this should have air conditioning, because that is something that's a luxury. So that's the approach I would take, is use the other comparables if that have it, as long as it's priced about the same.
Kind of the benefits of working with a good realtor as well, to know kind of the market and say, hey, like a home like this, you know, maybe they're overpricing it because they're not including these things, and this is where you can really show your value to someone to say, this is something we're going to focus on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you always run into situations where, you know, the home is maybe overpriced, you know, for a multitude of reasons, but usually, yes, it's missing some of those comforts that someone might want. And so, yes, knowing the market is going to be super important. Obviously, you know, our whole team is every day kind of in the market, seeing how things are moving, you know, what the options are in each area. So knowing that, when we do walk into a house, we usually have a pretty good idea how it compares to other ones in the same area.
Awesome. Let's move on to the next one.
Awesome.
All right, Connor, where all the action happens, the bathroom. When we're talking about number 4 on our list, plumbing and electrical, what should a home buyer be considering and looking out for?
So bathrooms obviously are a big one for plumbing. You know, you're usually going to have a tub, a shower. You might have a standalone tub and a standalone shower, toilet, sink, might have double sinks. So lots of areas where water problems could arise. So, you know, really easy things you can do when you're viewing the home for a first time on a walkthrough, you know, is look underneath the sink. You just crouch down. You know, obviously, if there's evidence of water, you know, there's been a leak at some point. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a major leak or anything. You will still want to refer to the disclosure, but this gives you an idea, kind of tells you maybe how new the plumbing is, if there has been any leaks, things like that. So that's a big one. Sinks, things like that. Obviously, you know, something really easy to check is kind of the sealant around the sink area. You know, if it's an older sink and maybe that some of that stuff's coming kind of loose and apart. We always know you're going to splash water on the countertop. You know, you don't really want it running underneath in behind here, down onto the ground. Your faucets, you know, you want to make sure everything's kind of solid. So just give it a little wiggle and see. And if it's solid, you know, that's pretty good. You know, test them, things like that. See if there's no obvious problems. Same thing with toilets. You know, you kind of want to check the sealant around the bottom. Make sure it's sealed. You can give it a little wiggle. Don't, you know, obviously shake it a ton, but good and solid. And then same thing in the showers. Kind of what you're looking for is, again, is everything attached properly? So at the top, you've got your head, right? But you've also got your main tap, good and solid, a little loose. Could probably fix that up a little bit. And then again, same thing, kind of the caulking or the sealant around the base is a big one. Seams, things like that, because you really, where you don't want water the most, because you can't really access it to
fix it afterwards.
To fix it up is behind the shower insert. So if you do have an insert, you want to make sure everything's really sealed up. That way no water can kind of run in behind there, rot out all the wood, everything like that. So some really easy, small visual things, takes all of 2 minutes to kind of come in here and do that and look for those types of things.
The other part of plumbing and electrical is electrical.
Electrical. So big thing, always super easy to do. Check the panel. Obviously in older homes, you might run into the risk of where it's aluminum wiring versus copper. You definitely don't want knob and tube, depending if it's a really old home. So you always want to kind of check the electrical panel, see what type of wiring it is. That's going to change your home insurance. So a lot of places, if it does have aluminum, they're going to want a guy to come in, recertify it, everything like that before you kind of can get your home insurance. So the other thing I always look for is your panel at max capacity? This one is not. You do have lots of free spaces still. So if you did have to add, some new appliances in or something like that, there is space for that. That's the number one thing. Kind of any recently modern panel is going to have enough. You're going to have your 240 volt service, over 100 plus amps. So most of that's going to be good. Obviously, if it is a really old house, that's something you want to double check on, especially if it doesn't have, say a washer, dryer, things like that. So you are going to want to make sure that you have enough service for what you're going to be needing to add in the future. And that's another thing that the inspector on the home inspection can check into. But super visual inspection, you can check, okay, how much space do I have? If it's a newer panel, it should have all the information on it. So, you can find out 60 circuits max, 30 circuits max with this, 120/240 volts, amperage. So it's got all the information on here that you will need to kind of verify it. If it's a really old panel, each of these switches that might be, basically worn off, same thing, sticker worn off. So if it's a really old panel, it'll be tough to tell exactly kind of what it is without, the inspector doing any kind of tests. So, but just visually inspecting it when you first come in, I would probably, if you're, first time buyer, just focus on, do we have room for expansion? Is kind of everything we already want, does it have a space? So if you want a hot tub, buy it. Does it have that? Does it have AC? That's a big one. So just check for some of those ones. Make sure if it doesn't have something like an AC unit and you want to add one in, that there's still space to expand that down the line.
If our panel was totally maxed out, Connor, and then there was the need for putting in an AC unit or something like that down the road, is it a big cost to get this replaced?
It will depend, a few $1,000s for sure. Kind of do that. Obviously, part of that's labor. You have to pay a guy to redo it. Sometimes depending on the situation, you may be able to get a sub panel. I have seen that for just, AC unit or something like that. So, but if you are going to be doing a lot of electrical work anyway, it might not be a bad idea just to upgrade it to a bigger panel. So for instance, let's say if this home was totally maxed out, it didn't have AC, you maybe wanted a hot tub down the line, didn't have that, and it was all maxed out. At that point, if you are wanting to put, those things in, it just makes sense at that point to upgrade the panel versus, trying to jigger things around in a particular way to get it to work if you want. Just upgrade the panel. Peace of mind. Obviously, you don't want to completely overload your whole panel, so a little bit of headroom doesn't hurt.
Rock on. And number 5, we're talking about major systems of a home, kind of like the heart, if we were to use a human analogy here.
Yeah, for sure. These are obviously the big parts of the home that you want to make sure are in good working order. Not only because, it might be expensive to replace, but also your comfort and, safety are also tied to them. In the case of your furnace, if it's the dead of winter and your furnace goes out in a snowstorm and no one can get out there, to service it for a few days, you are going to be cold And then you're also worried about pipes and everything freezing, which can cause a ton of damage. So super easy things you can do as you're kind of walking through it. All the appliances should have that green kind of gas tag. So whether it's, the hot water heater, the furnace, when it's installed, Sask Energy, Sask Power, that tag's supposed to go on there telling you the service date and the installation date. So that's a really good way to just tell how old, the furnace is, the water heater is. Saskatoon, we're lucky. We do have really good water compared to Regina, for instance. So our water heaters generally last a lot longer. Kind of in that 10, 12-year window, whereas Regina, actually, a lot of people just rent them.
No way.
Because, 5, 6 years, they might, depending where you are, they might just crap out on you. So those tags are something really easy to do. Sometimes older homes or, maybe the owner didn't like the tag there, somehow it got pulled off. So you can't really tell. So at that point, you're kind of, if you can find a sticker, you can get a model number, you can look it up, kind of tell you the age of it. Otherwise, you're kind of waiting for the inspector to kind of give you the best guess. But those are major ones. Furnace filter is always a big one. So I'm not going to pull the furnace filter out of this guy, but that's something you can check. Just pull it out quick, take a look. If it's like caked on, really dirty, probably tells you that they're neglecting it. Really should be changing those, every couple months. Kind of thing at the latest. So if it's caked on there and it's really filthy, maybe, okay, they haven't been taking as good a care as they should. That's something the inspector needs to look at a little bit, closer. And, if that's something that determines that it's really dirty, you might want to try bargain or negotiate to get it cleaned out. Get the furnace cleaned, make sure everything's good. Obviously, airflow is a big thing in a furnace. So if it's just caked in with dust, dirt, everything, it's not going to be operating properly. It's going to have to work harder. It's going to shorten the lifespan. Same thing with the water heater. Typically, most of the water heaters now, like this one, will be the power vented variety. So there's a vent fan, sends all the fumes out the side. If you are looking at an older home, that is something important to look for. Don't just assume it is, a power vented model. Now, if it's an older home that has a chimney, a lot of the time it just will vent out the chimney. And so that's something to be aware of that, say you do want to move the water heater and then you can't get access to the stack to vent out, you will have to, get the power vented model, which if there's already not, a vent for it out the side of the house, that will have to be added. So that'll add a little bit of cost. But those are probably the two most important things. Some homes, especially modern ones, will have an HRV. So just making sure, again, check the filter, has it been changed recently, things like that. How old is it? Obviously, that's going to help move air around the house, circulate it, keep the humidity in check, and even throughout the house. So these are kind of the three biggest things when it comes to major systems you are going to be wanting to check on. Another one is, this one doesn't have it, but a sump pump. So generally your sump pump will be in the same location as your furnace, water heater, things like that. You can test the pump, make sure it's operating properly, open up the floor drain, see, is there water in there already? Like, is it bone dry? Things like that. That will give you an idea, kind of a bit of an idea as well, kind of what shape it's in, how much water do you get kind of around the foundation, the water table in the area. Saskatoon's tricky. Some areas, very high water table, other areas a little bit lower water table. So totally dependent on kind of the area, but if it does have a sump pump, that's something you can definitely check on.
Our 5 things that we're going to focus on as we're going on our next house tour. Conor, thank you for doing such a great job of running through those. I think I learned a lot, and I'll definitely have an eye out for the next time that I'm looking at that next property. One thing that I always love to ask people when they come on the podcast is, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say, this is always going to be dependent, I think, to the person. For me, probably, maybe don't take things quite so seriously. Enjoy kind of that youth time while you can, because as you well know, right, once you get to a certain age, you got bills, a family, you got other things to worry about. So, don't be too worried about being too serious, kind of whether it's high school or university, right? Have some fun, don't take yourself too seriously. I think that's a big one for me. If I think back, maybe, being worried about what people think. I think that's something I would tell my younger self, or if I have kids, just, be yourself, find a group of friends that you enjoy hanging out with, and just worry about that, and, kind of getting things done that way.
Wonderful. If someone watched this, Conor, or listened to it and they're like, man, that sounded really great. You do a great job of walking through properties. You're very analytical, and they want to get in contact you to help them buy that next property. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Obviously, probably the best way, phone or email, always on. So my phone number is 306-260-4469. And then all our team emails are the same. So mine is Conor@SaskatoonRealEstate.com. Social media also works though, Instagram, Facebook, just my name, Conor Palendat. Also a YouTube channel as well. So there's some more video content that way. And again, all of my contact info is on all of those. So number of ways to reach me. Always checking those as much as I can, make sure I'm not missing anything. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast, sharing your expertise. Really appreciate it.
Great, thanks.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast. I hope you liked it, found some value here. If you did, make sure to subscribe to never miss our weekly videos that come out every single Monday. And of course, it helps out the algorithms if you hit the like button as well. One quick note before you do go, on the mortgage front, I am seeing too many people who are automatically signing their renewal notices when their existing lender comes to them. I'm even hearing stories of lenders that I have access to overcharging their clients by 0.5%. And the banks and lenders are doing this because they know that a lot of people get the renewal notice, sign it, move on with their life. But you are making a massive mistake by not at least having a mortgage broker be the sounding board for you to know that, is this an accurate rate and is my lender treating me fairly? Please, if you have a renewal notice coming up and give us at least 30 days, reach out and I'd be happy to help let you know if that is a fair market rate, and potentially we could save you thousands of dollars by switching you to a new lender. Simply click in the description of this video my contact information and I'd be happy to help you out. Until next week, I'm Ron Caroni, your Saskatchewan mortgage professional. Bye for now.